La donna immobile, qual piuma al vento, muta dal tempo e di pensiero.
That was me. I sang all the other times except in Virtuoso, where the doctor becomes the singing sensation on the MTV planet. Or the planet that had no music and finally they did. In that episode I sang like the first half of it, and then they brought in a real opera singer because it was just too hard. And also I'm a baritone, not a tenor. So if you take tenor pieces from famous operas and then take them down 2.5 steps so I can sing them, they don't sound like they're supposed to anymore. So my teacher, Agostino Castagnola, that was his name, Augie to me, who taught me the other stuff. A terrific guy, great singer, great voice. He did in Virtuoso, he sings Rondino al Nido, which is what the doctor sings at the very end, which is a beautiful Italian. It's not an opera. It's just a popular song. Return of the Sparrow. That's
Sotto la gronde la torre antica, una rondine amica, allo sporcial del Mandorgue tornata. Ritorno tutti gli anni, sempre alla stessa data. Monte amore, essa barca per tornar, solo amore.
Except it's supposed to be up here. It's supposed to be up, way up there. Thank you. But, so when he sang it, it was really the way it was supposed to be. But thank you very much for guys. If you knew a lot about opera, you'd know how incredibly bad I really am. But thank you. Thank you very much.
I was raised on opera, Doc.
Oh, really? All right. So I do good. I give good phony.
Yes.
Phony opera. All right. Next question. Another question. And how is it that I'm so much better looking in person than I am on TV? Thank you for asking. Actually, no one asked that question. I asked that question. Yes. Yes, sir.
Can you tell us about Renegades?
Renegades. Star Trek Renegades is going to be an online movie. The hope is it's being treated like a pilot for an online Star Trek series. Now, how can we do that when CBS and Paramount own the rights to Star Trek? What a great question. The reason is you can make something and not benefit from it financially. You can't charge anything for it. So we had a Kickstarter campaign. We raised some money off of the names of the actors that committed to it. And you're allowed to make something that violates Paramount's copyright as long as you don't benefit from it financially. So it will be given up free online somehow. Now, the dream is that if CBS goes, this is not bad, that they will give us permission to do an online series, and then there'll be money generated from, what do you call it? Either it'll be charged for, as long as CBS says, here's how much we want, and you'll get to keep this much. Or it'll just be an ad-supported platform where you still watch the shows for free, but you're annoyed every 10 seconds with an ad. Which is the way the internet is, right? It's like, when you use Twitter or anything now, you just get annoyed to death where they try to make money from your free thing that you have.
You got like a budget, right?
A budget. We have a budget. We're shooting. The show is shooting 2 days already. I originally had a much larger part, I'll tell you honestly. I love to work on stage, and I got cast. After I originally agreed to do Renegades, we were supposed to shoot it last spring, and they needed a bigger budget, so they did a second Kickstarter campaign. So I had committed to shoot it in whatever that was, April or something. And then when they postponed it to October, I said, October's a very busy month for me, but I'll do my best. Well, what happened was that I developed a conflict, so my part has been shrunken down. And do you know Sean Young, the actress Sean Young?
From Ace and Twin Stripes.
Yes, they've basically taken my part and divided it between the two of us. They've made 2 characters. It's hard to explain, but it's very cool what they've done. And the really good news is I get to kiss Sean Young. So I have a smaller part, but I do get to kiss Sean Young, which I think is probably, I'm pretty excited about it. I don't think it really does anything for you guys, but it's going to be cool for me.
Prince could kiss.
Say it again?
Didn't know holograms can kiss, Doctor.
Holograms they actually kiss better than anybody else. I say that because I know, and you don't have to believe me, but frankly you probably won't find out, because if you do find out, then that would mean something terribly inappropriate happened.
Sounds like a bad scene out of Avatar.
Sounds like a bad scene out of Avatar. I'm going to give this guy a mic because he's my new co-host. All right, so you have do you have another question? I did answer Renegades. Oh, let me just finish. Renegades is basically a rogue Star Trek. It's like all of the characters have kind of, you know how Tom Paris had a bad rap in the beginning of Voyager and he kind of had to redeem himself? Well, this is the theme of redemption, of something having gone wrong for each of these characters. They've each either been accused of something they didn't do, or they were involved in something that went wrong, but they all have kind of a chip on their shoulders. And they're all banded together, so they do these things that Starfleet needs them to do, that is aware of, but they kind of do it in their own unorthodox way. So it's sort of a kind of a Black Ops kind of version of Star Trek. It's a very cool. Sorry?
No Prime Directive?
I'm not at liberty to answer that. I could answer that question because it does come up in the pilot, but I just want to leave you with a little bit of excitement. I don't want to spoil anything. But Tim Russ is directing. Walter Koenig's in it. Tim is also on camera as well. I'm in it. Adrienne Wilkinson. Do you know Adrienne Wilkinson from? Yeah, exactly. She is in it playing a female captain. She's terrific. And they're. Oh God, I'm sorry, I'm embarrassed. I don't remember. There's a lot of really good actors from other aspects of science fiction other than Star Trek. So I hope you'll have a look at it. Tim is a very good director.
Are you still playing the Voyager Doctor, or are you one of the slave minor doctors?
Oh, I am. That's a very good question. I agreed to play. I did not want to play the Doctor. I wanted to play the programmer, Louis Zimmerman. I thought it made more sense. I thought it made more sense because the Doctor hasn't aged, and he still looks younger and trimmer than I do right now. So I wanted to leave you with that, unless they wanted to digitally correct me frame by frame, which they do with a lot of actors now. I didn't want to touch the legacy of the Doctor's character, but it makes complete sense that Louis Zimmerman is still working and programming and doing other projects, right? So that was my decision. I hope you don't mind. Yes, I'm sorry, right there, sir. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Wondering, what was your most favorite episode and what was your least favorite episode?
Okay, I could tell. I'll do my least favorite first. I feel bad because obviously one of our wonderful writers wrote this one. I just thought it was the silliest one we did. It was called Twisted.
Oh, yeah.
Twisted, I think, is the episode where all of the space inside Voyager was jumbled up. So for 43 minutes, we would come through a door, and instead of being in engineering, we were in the mess hall. So this is what we did for 43 minutes. Is that 43 minutes of exciting science fiction? I mean, yes, it would be creepy. It would definitely be creepy if you're home in your house and all of the internal space had been redone, reconfigured, to use a Star Trek term. That would be really annoying, to get up and go into the kitchen to make some coffee and suddenly you were in your basement.
Like you. Sorry, Grandma.
Right, but it's still, it's not, I wouldn't call that high drama. But anyway, so that was the one, and we had a scene, we had a female director named Nancy Malone, who I felt, no, it wasn't Nancy Malone, it was another female director. I felt really bad for her because we misbehaved terribly, because we all thought it was a silly show. We had a scene on Tom Paris's holographic bar, Sandrine's bar. It was on. We had a scene where we're all sitting around a table, and we each had one line. And it was one of those awful shots where the camera just happens to pass by you when you say your one line. We're all sitting around the table, and somebody says, well, you know, it's a camera just moves over their faces. And we were so punch drunk and tired that we couldn't get it right. So we would get 7 people would get their line right, and the 8th person messed it up. Then we would get 9 people who got it right, and the 10th person messed it up. I mean, it just went over and over, and finally the director gave up the shot, and we did it in cuts because nobody could get their one line right because we were busy goofing around. So that was I remember that night as being one of the nights where we really, where I really felt that we were not fair to the poor director. She killed herself after that. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. I was joking. Sorry. No, she's fine. And I just fell over. I thought the table was closer. Here, let me lean this way. And then my favorite. I have a few favorites depending on the style. I mean, Timeless is one of the 100th episode where Voyager crashes in the ice planet and Harry Kim changes history. I thought was a really great one.
I was actually going to ask about that. That's really similar to your to the Renegade theme, really, because like Chakotay and Barry have to go off the reserve and steal a ship to.
Yes, it's similar, but it's not really. If you saw the plot, it's not different. But you're right. As far as going rogue, the going rogue theme, you know, in order to do the greater good, we act like bad guys. Yes, it does have that in common with Renegades. I always thought Timeless reminded me of Titanic. You know, because when you watch the movie Titanic, you just keep wishing that you could just change. You could just change it and go back and not have the iceberg there, or not have the, you know. But I thought that was a particularly great one for the whole cast, especially for Garrett. As far as Doctor-centric episodes, dramatically I love one called Latent Image, where Joe Menosky, our writer, described it as the birth of the Doctor's soul. It was a Sophie's Choice situation where the Doctor had to choose between saving a young female ensign and Harry Kim, and because he knows Harry Kim better, he saves Harry Kim's life. It's one of those, I can't save them both. I had to make a choice. And then he can't reconcile his feelings of guilt at having let his personal emotion influence his decision. And in fact, by saving his friend, he could not do no harm to the other. It obligated him to let her go in saving one. So that conflict within his program that he had violated in strictest terms, he violated the Hippocratic Oath, which is sort of the Doctor's prime directive, right? Led him to have kind of a nervous breakdown or an emotional breakdown. It was the conflict in his program led him to keep thinking circularly around his decision and reliving the moment of decision over and over again. And he can't do anything anymore, so they have to sort of shut him down and reboot him. Do you remember that? That was a cool one, I thought.
That reminded me of that episode in the original where Spock went nuts during his programming.
You know, nothing. Star Trek invented recycling. Really, it did. Long before we were picking up aluminum cans, Star Trek was reusing plot lines. I think that is a very good dramatic episode. Then I have my favorite romantic episode is Someone to Watch Over Me, where the sort of My Fair Lady episode where the Doctor is teaching Seven how to behave on a date. Oh yeah, I love that one. That's a great one. And then I think my favorite sort of out and out comic one is Tinker, Tenor, Doctor, Spy, which begins with the Doctor singing La Donna Mobile, the one where the Doctor is trying to have a fantasy life. He tries to program himself to have daydreams, and then he can't tell the difference between his daydreams and his real life. And, yeah, exactly, the emergency command hologram. I remember when Brandon Braga asked me, he said, well, what would some of the Doctor's fantasies be? And I said, sketching 7 of 9 in the nude. I said it so fast that clearly I had thought of it before. So, of course, they put it in the show. I should have said something else. I should have said, well, never mind what I should have said. There are children in the room. Anyway, yes. Well, I already asked you, so I have to come back to you. Who haven't I asked? Did I ask you a question?
Oh, not yet.
All right. Yes, sir.
You were part of one of the greatest werewolf transformations in cinema history, The Howling.
Mm-hmm.
Could you describe how that process was?
Okay. I'm in a classic B movie called The Howling from 1980 or 81. I don't remember, 80 or 81. 81. It's over 30 years ago, so it's 32 years ago. It's when I met Joe Dante. I play a character named Eddie Quist, who happens to be a werewolf. It's sort of like a Charles Manson kind of killer, who is... and what I loved about the script, John Sayles went on to be a very famous filmmaker, wrote the adaptation of the book, because The Howling is based on a horror novel. What was cool about the script is that werewolves were treated like almost like they had to be in a self-help group, like they were in Alcoholics Anonymous or something like that. If you had this special ability, there was a guy played by Patrick McNee who was trying to teach you how to keep your impulses under control. So he was a sort of weird cult leader. It was a very cool old movie. It stands up, it really does. But what was extraordinary about it was that it had some practical makeup effects, meaning not computer generated. This is before computer generated imagery. It had practical makeup effects that had never been seen before. Rob Bottin, who was, I think, 20 or 21 years old, who had been the protege of Rick Baker. They were working on competing movies with similar technologies at the same time. Rick Baker's was An American Werewolf in London, which starred David Naughton. And mine that Rob did, the makeup on me, was called The Howling. And what it involved was using little air bladders. First of all, they cast my face in alginate, which is what dentists use to make a mold of your teeth. So they kind of put this stuff on, make a mold of your own face. Then they sculpt your face. Then they make a thin mask that exactly looks like your face but fits over your own face. It's as if you had a thin latex mask that joined under your jaw, inside your lip, and right under your eyes, and this mask of you fits right over your face. Then between your own skin and the mask, they would put little air bladders, little tiny balloons that looked sort of like condoms. But they assured me they were not. And these little balloons would be glued to your face, and they had little air hoses that came out the back. Then they put a copy of your face over the balloon. So they had a balloon here, 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 a big one on my neck, and then all the hoses came out the back. But then I had a long-haired wig, kind of like The Walking Dead. You know, I had this long, straggly wig that covered up all the hoses, and I literally had like 8 or 10 young kids, 18 to 20, off camera with little hoses in their mouth, puffing air into my face. So during the transformation, my face starts to percolate, and no one had ever seen anything like this before. How did you get a person's face to suddenly start looking like a pot of chili boiling? And then after the initial bubbling, then he made actual puppet heads of my face, which had a mechanical framework that poked out the muzzle of the werewolf. So at the beginning of the transformation is really me, and then it transitions into these puppet heads. If you've never seen it, go home tonight, go on YouTube, and search Robert Picardo in The Howling, and you will see this transformation. It's pretty darn cool. And when you think it's 32 years old, it's very cool. So yes, so I am a famous werewolf. I started my longtime friendship with Joe Dante, who I've worked with in many other movies, including Inner Space, Gremlins 2, The Burbs, and then various television projects. Explorers, which is a cute movie for kids. If you're a parent, Explorers. I mean, for kids that are, let's say, 8 and older. But anyway, I'm proud of The Howling, proud of my long friendship with Joe Dante, and I'm still very close friends with Rob Bottin, who's the brilliant makeup artist. Because of my friendship with Rob, I was also, a year or two later, in a movie called Legend with Ridley Scott, playing a humpbacked water witch named Meg Mucklebones. Scary. That was a very dangerous job. And I could tell that story if you want, or should I go on to other? You want to hear how I almost got killed? On Legend? All right. So I get hired. Ridley Scott, who had hired Rob to do these incredible makeup creatures in this fantasy movie called Legend, he had seen The Howling. That's one of the reasons he hired Rob. So Rob pitched me to play the devil, the Tim Curry part, but thank God they used Tim Curry, who was brilliant in the movie. But the only other full-size character of the makeup characters, all the other ones were little people. You know, either were actors who were of small stature. The only other full-size character was the witch. So Rob wanted me to play the witch, so I auditioned for Ridley Scott. I did it full out. I went to the Beverly Hills Hotel when he was visiting California, even though they shot the movie in England. And I auditioned for him, and he stared at me when I was done, after I'd made these terrible faces and noise come out of my mouth, and he said, "Well then, you barely need the makeup, do you?" It was about as backhanded a compliment as I've ever gotten. So he hired me. I fly over there. My wife and I got married that year, so it was like 2 or 3 months before we got married, so we went on a pre-honeymoon. She came with me. We spent a week or so in England. I worked at Pinewood Studios, which is the most legendary film studio, I think, in England. When I arrived there and showed my passport, and they said, "Are you here on holiday or here to work?" I said, "I'm here to work." I was promptly detained for 4 hours because they had not secured a work permit for me. So I got a call. They called the company that I told them I was supposed to be working for. The producer gets on the phone and he says, "Why did you tell them you're here to work?" I said, "Because I'm here to work." "Well, we didn't secure a work permit for you or anything." So I literally, I guess some money changed hands, probably behind the scene. I went back into the line, and they said, "Are you here to work or on holiday?" I said, "I'm here on holiday." Then, when I went to work, my name did not appear on the call sheet, because I wasn't there. The part of Meg Mucklebones was very coincidentally played by an actress named Meg Mucklebones. Literally, the call sheet, it said Tom Cruise playing whatever his character's name was, Mia Sara, then it said Meg Mucklebones in the role of Meg Mucklebones. Okay, so I'm wearing this 6.5-hour rubber makeup that goes down to about my knees, and it takes 6.5 hours to get in it. The creature lives in the water. So we're on this giant set that's been built, and the biggest sound stage they have. There's a steel floor with 3 feet of water, but because I come up out of the water, I was on a trap door that was about this big. You see how wide this table is? Imagine this was a square table. So if this were the dimensions. I'm standing on this little trap door. There's a metal pole that comes out, and then like a little pad that my butt rests against, so that I am strapped, like you're seatbelted into a car. I'm strapped to this little seat, so that when I come up, the audience, I only came up to here, so the audience doesn't see the support, but I could move around like this, because I was secured there, okay? Think about that. So then I hear Ridley Scott says, "I want an absolutely clear, surface of water, like just this mirror surface," and then he comes up. And I go to the assistant director, who's this big chubby guy who sounds like he just walked out of the Jungle Book. This is fine, like that, with a pith helmet on, and jolly good and everything. And I said, I heard Mr. Scott wants me to, I said, "If you take me under the water and wait for the water to stop rippling, I will be under, I guess, 5 to 10 minutes without any oxygen, without any way to tell you if I'm in distress. Then when you push me up on the trap door, if you've lowered me, remember at 3 feet, this stage door passes a steel floor. So when you push me up, if my body recoils and I extend over this 3-foot square area, you will shear my arm off between the steel plates, or if I go back, you'll decapitate me." And this is what he said. Yes, I suppose you're right. "Well, we better rehearse this then." And I started thinking, I'm not even here. My name's on the call sheet. They could